Our interest in Christian education has been growing here of late, and there's many signs of that. That's a very good thing. We've begun to interview candidates for our new Minister of Christian Education position. That's exciting, to actually meet people who want to do this kind of work with us and going through the issues, sifting through all the stuff that's involved in interviewing. And one of the things that we want is a beefed-up adult education program. Rabbi Benjamin has been coming once a month and leading a lesson and discussion about ancient Jewish history, about the temple, and then how that has a bearing on us today. There's growing energy for an active youth group program that can broaden their Christian experience with us here. And as Drew has already shared with us, by teaching, it's how we learn best. And oftentimes when we ask our young people to teach, they come back and say, now I understand much more about the faith because I had to prepare a lesson on this or this today. And then there's our growing Sunday school system itself. There are many different approaches to Christian education across denominations, across different theological groups. We can get involved in dates, facts, names, memorizing Bible passages, all of which can be very important. But our emphasis here isn't so much on knowledge about God. That gives the structure, but it is knowledge of God that produces the heartbeat. So we have the skeleton, we have the heartbeat, the soul. How do we help the transformational message of God, of God's presence, and of Jesus in our long religious history change the ways that we live? That's our goal. It's hard. It's not easy to do. As Drew said, it's wonderful to watch students get one of those aha experiences. I feel the same way. People will say, I've been thinking about your sermon all week, and that's just music to a preacher's ears. And some people say, I've been trying to forget about your sermon all week, and I can't. Sometimes that's music to my ears, too. The bottom line, the Christian education that we seek to impart here will make a difference if it first makes a difference with us. Reverend Tom Eric tells this story on a subway in New York City. A Wall Street intern got a bit mouthy on a commuter train. When asked by a conductor to pipe down, the intern fired back, "Do you know how well educated I am?" As if receiving a degree from New York University exempted her from normal civility. My addition, this young woman was obviously very bright, very well educated. You don't get invited to be an intern on Wall Street if you're not sharp. She was a top performer in her field, and she'll probably make a lot of money. But would you describe her as being a learned person? Well, she's still got a way to go. Back to Reverend Eric. Some get what God is trying to do here with us, not to make life easy, not to make them elite, an elite tribe entitled to rule, but to help them deal graciously with burdens, bravely with challenges, and mercifully with all, even and especially one's enemies. This is this question that stuck in my mind. The question is, how did one education lead to nothing and another lead to everything? How can faith communities figure that out? And that's where he leaves us. How can one education lead to nothing? We want our education here to lead to everything, for our children and for us. My wife, Ann, had very delicate and difficult surgery over 30 years ago. And she was in one of Boston's famous teaching hospitals. Her situation was such that the chief of surgery took the case, performed the delicate surgery, and then he would make his rounds and come in the morning, but he would bring 6 interns with him and have them stand around the bed, and he'd sort of interrogate them and watch them as they interacted with her. He was trying to teach them, by example, how you deal with someone who's gone through this kind of surgery. He was a rough taskmaster, and he sometimes would grill them, and they'd stumble, and these people are highly trained, but he was trying to push them further. He wanted them to learn. Though she was in pain, it felt good for her to know that she was part of the education of those who would go on to help others. Teaching hospital. It struck me that every church has to be a teaching church. Every one of us is an intern, and Jesus is the head. 1 Corinthians 13. We see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. I one time went to a church that had a museum, and it had a replica of an ancient mirror, and it was polished metal. And you looked at it, and nothing like what we see today, where you can pick up texture and color and everything, all the details. We're used to that. Not then. Paul said this. He's talking about a mirror that you looked at, but it's like looking at yourself in a pool of water. You don't get all the detail and the color and the texture that you do today. So he used an example that would speak to them. When we look at ourselves now, or look at life, it's like we're looking in a mirror dimly. It's not easy to see the whole truth. He said, but then, meaning after I die, then I'll see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall understand fully, even as I am and have been fully understood. What a feeling that must be, to be fully understood and to see that, and then to understand everything about myself as I have been fully understood. Remember, this isn't intended to be an easy or a peaceful thing when we really think about it. I'd see myself fully as I have always been, everything I've said and done, everything I've intended. Can we skip some of that? It's only given to us, though, when we have the strength to receive it. And apparently that's not in this life. But as for now, we have to make do with the dimmer images that we can see, and accept the fact that our darkness will always be a part of us and our experience of life. We never escape, but we can bring light into it, and that's our life task. It still matters that we try to sow seeds of hope and love and allow the light of truth to enter and enlighten us. That's why we're here. If we are to be a teaching church in the true sense of the word, we also then have to be a learning church, a humble church, and a bold church, a place of peace and a place of holy discomfort. That's the kind of Christian education that Jesus offered, and nothing has changed. There's been no improvement over that in the last 2,000 years. For children, the most important lessons that they will ever learn, and the way we learn, is those lessons are caught rather than taught. Let me tell you what I mean. The lessons that sink in seldom happen when we sit them down and give them a lecture or read to them from the Bible. Instead, they watch us intently, listen to us even if we don't think so, especially when life is most difficult and stress is running high, and observe how we deal with the pressure, with our closest relationships, and with our faith. They're not taking notes and trying to give us a final exam, but they're taking it all in. They're not so much interested in what we say about our faith, which is knowledge about God, but more in how we embody our faith, knowledge of God. This is why parenting is one of the toughest jobs you'll ever do. If you are a parent or have been, you know. There just aren't any shortcuts. There's no faking it. Every day's a final exam. When somebody, especially a teenager, treats you with disrespect, one of the toughest things in the world is not to respond in kind. Every cell in our body shouting out that this kid deserves to be ridiculed in turn. I don't take that. But our soul knows differently. It doesn't mean you don't speak up or don't discipline, but it means we don't lose control and that we speak with respect, even if we're hurt and wounded. See, the soul knows the parts that we only see dimly in the mirror. So what kind of education do you want your children to get here? What kind of education do you want to get here? Do you want to produce brilliant and charming workers who can make money and be very successful and work for the system and work in the system, but can be rude, arrogant in public? How do we let our kids know what's most important? Our popular culture won't be teaching them the values of Jesus because everybody knows that you don't get ahead that way out in the jungle. Real Christian education always involves struggle because Jesus was so countercultural. His stories tip us upside down. Talk about aha experiences and sometimes oh no experiences when Jesus is speaking and teaching. Clarissa Pinkola Estes shares this helpful understanding of how we can make a difference. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls can catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. See, I think people come to church to pick up your fire. I think you come to experience it in others' soul. And we also come to give it, to pass it on. That's how we got it. And we can't shirk or ration it out. What is needed for dramatic change in our world, she goes on, is an accumulation of tiny acts. That's what Mother Teresa said. You know, you're not going to get a chance to change the world with one big dramatic thing. It's going to be a series of very small actions, but do them all with love. We can all do that. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up. And I add, people who reveal their souls together and give each other strength and light and hope and courage, because the world can be a wearying place if you're trying to make a difference for good. So that's where we come in. And this isn't just for parents of young children. This is a teaching church filled with lifelong learners, invested in the moral fabric, not only of our church, but of our whole world. We might not see dramatic changes from the work we try to do right away, or ever. I don't have a clue sometimes what impact a visit or a prayer or a sermon or a blog has on people. Sometimes people write back or tell me, but it's hard to know the full impact of anything like that. It's the same for all of us. We don't know what the impact is, but we trust that if we do it consistently and love and embody it, it's going to matter. And it does. Drew has told us that. And he knows that his words have mattered. That's what it's all about, going in faith and trust. So in terms of the Christian education of your children, I guess I have to ask, meaning all of our children, all of us, what have you been teaching lately? What have they seen of your soul, of your heart, of your holy fire? Where does your compassion go? Have they experienced your forgiveness? Have you asked for theirs? It matters how we express our hope our fears, our courage. What we do, what we avoid, what we give, what we hold back. How can a brilliant education lead to nothing, says Reverend Eric, and another education lead to everything? Life revolves around our answer to that. It's all about soul and how willing we are to turn ours loose. If you ponder these words later today, or later this week, if they keep you up at night, don't be overly harsh on yourself, but don't be overly easy either. That's how we learn. Amen.